The Three Lucky Charms, retold from the original by Guido Gozzano. Once upon a time there were three brothers called Simon, John, and Peter. When their father died, he left each of them a lucky charm. Simon was very surprised when he saw his charm. It was a tablecloth. Although it was old and in need of repair, whenever it was laid on the table, the most delicious food and drink seemed to appear. To John, the merchant and voyager, he left a cloak. When he put it on, it made him invisible, and could transport him wherever he wanted to go. To Peter, who was a poet, and was therefore always out of work, he left a purse. And what an incredible purse it was! No matter how much money Peter spent, he always had 100 gold coins left in it. John and Simon were very downhearted about their presents, and they decided that they would continue their lives as before, and use the charms as little as possible. In fact, they put them in the bottom of a drawer and forgot all about them. Still, Peter was delighted with his charm, and he decided he would put his magic purse to good use, and use it to explore the world. After some time, Peter left his small village for the city. When he got there, he decided to buy himself a new wardrobe and get rid of his modest country clothes. He went straight to the best tailor in the city. "Make me a set of clothes fit for a prince," he told him. The tailor worked so hard on sewing the clothes for him that by the end of the week he was completely exhausted. He presented Peter with his new suit of clothes, and he tried them on. "Yes, I certainly do look like a prince," he said, as he admired himself in the mirror. He looked so elegant that he was confident about going to court, even though he hadn't been invited. When Peter arrived at court, he opened his purse and gave out the gold coins to all the courtiers. "He must be a prince from some faraway kingdom," the courtiers muttered, because they hadn't seen anyone dressed in such grand style before. The poet prince was a very jolly fellow, and became good friends with everyone. They held great banquets for him, where everyone ate and drank until they could eat and drink no more. He was very generous and was constantly giving people gold coins from his purse, but everyone was amazed to see that the purse was always full. Greedy Princess Lorraine desperately wanted the purse that was never empty, so she told Tercilla, the servant, all about her plan. "When you serve Peter with his wine tonight, you must pour some powder in it. This will send him to sleep," the princess told her. "Then I will steal his purse and hide it in a safe place. This way our generous prince will awake to find his purse has gone." That night, when the prince was sitting at the table for his banquet, and was busily entertaining all the guests with his fantastic stories, Tercilla slipped some powder in his drink. Within minutes he was fast asleep, and so Lorraine stole the purse of gold coins. While he was still in a deep sleep, the guards dragged him out of the banqueting room. When Peter woke up, he was surprised to see trees and flowers all around him. It was a warm evening, and the guards had left him in the palace gardens. Straight away he looked in his pockets for his magic purse. It wasn't there. He searched in the flower beds, he searched in the bushes. In fact, he looked everywhere, but he just couldn't find it. "Where's my purse? Who's stolen my purse?" he cried out, but there was no one around to hear his cries. Now his purse had gone. He knew that he would have to find a different way of impressing the people at court. "Aha! I'll borrow the tablecloth," he thought to himself. So he returned to his hometown and asked Simon if he could borrow the magic tablecloth that always produced meals ready to eat. "Trust me, Simon," he said. "I am your brother, and I need your tablecloth to help me get my magic purse back. I promise I'll return the tablecloth when I've finished with it." So Simon gave him the tablecloth, and he returned to the court with it. Desperate to get back to the palace, Peter disguised himself as a peasant and asked for work in the kitchen. The king offered him a position as the lowliest of servants. He soon became promoted as he produced many wonderful banquets. With the help of the tablecloth, all he had to do was lay it over the table, and lots of wonderful food was produced immediately. At first, none of the courtiers realized that the new servant was using a magic tablecloth to produce the food. News of the wonderful cooking quickly spread through the palace, and Tercilla wanted to find out the young man's secret. So one mealtime she watched him through a crack in the door. "I see, it's a magic tablecloth that's behind all this." Then she followed Peter, watched him packing the tablecloth away in a chest, and told the princess what she'd seen. With the help of one of the king's knights, Princess Lorraine forced open the chest that held the tablecloth and swapped it for a normal one. The next morning Peter went to prepare the royal breakfast, but as he laid out the tablecloth, no food appeared. "Don't say the tablecloth has lost its magic powers," he muttered to himself. Peter had fallen in love with the princess, and he now needed something else to impress her, so he went to his brother John and asked to borrow his invisible cloak. John was hesitant about lending him his cloak, but Peter promised he would return it soon. When he put the cloak on, he was totally invisible. Wearing the magic cloak, Peter flew back to court. Nobody could see him except for the princess. "Fly away with me," he said. So the princess took his hand, and together they flew high in the sky alongside the birds. "I'm taking you to Lucky Island," he said. "This is where I would like to live with you. We can live on this deserted island together forever." The princess was quite happy to follow him, because she was intending to steal his cloak, fly away, and leave him all alone on the deserted island. While the prince was asleep, the princess stole the cloak, put it on, and flew away from Lucky Island. Left all alone on the island, Peter searched desperately for food. Eventually, after searching for many days, he found a tree full of ripe red apples. They looked too juicy to resist, so he picked them and ate at least a dozen. When he was full up, he took a drink from the pool nearby, but he couldn't believe his eyes when he looked at his reflection in the water. "What's happened to my face?" he cried. "It must be those apples. They've turned me as green as an olive." Peter ate all kinds of fruits that were growing on the island to try and cure his greenness, but nothing seemed to work. "I'm stuck with this green face for the rest of my life," he thought, and he was just about to give up when he found a tree full of yellow apples. As he ate them, he slowly returned to his normal color. "It looks as if I've discovered something very important." A few weeks later, a ship sailed past Lucky Island. The crew landed on the island and helped Peter aboard their ship. After a long, long journey across stormy seas, he arrived in the kingdom of the princess. He disguised himself as a monk and went straight to the palace. He was carrying a huge basket full of red apples with him when he got there. He hadn't forgotten how cruelly the princess had treated him, and he was determined to teach her a lesson. "Lovely red apples, who'll buy my lovely red apples?" he cried as he wandered through the palace. Tursilla spotted the monk with his basket of delicious-looking apples. "The princess adores red apples," she thought. "I'll get them to surprise her." Peter gave her 3 rosy red apples at a bargain price, and she took them straight to the princess. The princess, king, and queen all ate the apples, but when they saw the horrified faces of the courtiers, they realized something awful had happened. Their faces were turning green, and they didn't realize it. One of the courtiers handed a mirror to Princess Lorraine. "I've turned green," she cried. The princess was so angry with Tursilla for buying the apples that she sacked her on the spot. The best and most famous doctors were called to the palace to find a cure for their strange problem. The king, queen, and princess covered their faces in special creams made of goat's milk. They drank delicious syrups made of honey and herbs, but still their faces were bright green. They tried everything they could possibly think of, but nothing seemed to be working. Eventually Peter appeared at court once again. He was dressed in his humble peasant's costume. He knew that he could cure them all with the yellow apples, and he knew that if he cured them all, he would be a powerful man and win the hand of the princess. But this didn't really matter to him, because Peter didn't really want any of these things. Now he knew that the princess was a cruel woman, and it was Tursilla the servant who he really loved. Peter crept through the palace looking for Tursilla, and on his way he came across Princess Lorraine. She was talking to a priest. When the princess had finished confessing to the priest, and the priest changed back into his ordinary clothes, Peter stole his priestly robes. Then Peter put on a false beard and went to confront the princess. Peter pretended to be the priest. "Young lady, you have not confessed to everything. There is something you have not told me." "Your Eminence, please forgive me. You are right. I have forgotten something." "It wouldn't be a purse, tablecloth, and cloak that you've forgotten to tell me about, would it?" said Peter. The princess felt very ashamed and went to fetch the tablecloth, cloak, and purse. "Yes, I must confess that it was me who stole them," she said. When Peter saw the charms on the table, he took off his disguise. "Don't you recognize me?" he said. "I'm the poet prince, and I'm the one who whisked you away to Lucky Island. Surely you haven't forgotten how cruelly you treated me?" The princess recognized him straight away. By now Peter felt rather sorry for the princess, so he gave her one of the yellow apples. She ate it, and her green complexion disappeared. "I am so relieved that you have turned me back to my normal color again, that I agreed to marry you after all," said the princess. "No, I'm sorry. I can't marry you because I love someone else," he said. "Your servant Tessilla is the one I love." Then Peter left the palace for good, taking his purse of gold coins, cloak, and tablecloth with him. He searched high and low for Tessilla, and eventually found her wandering about in the forest. They soon married, and were both able to live in grand style, thanks to the purse full of gold coins. The end.